I would love for you to start this episode up for us.
That's great. And why don't we start where all the love is being spread with San Jose, eliminated all the way back on the 14th of September, almost a month ago on the date of recording, more than a month ago when this comes out. Our wooden spoon champions of 2024 had a really rough go of it. Just 6 wins in 33 matches to this point. My guess, probably going to be 6-34. 21 total points, and by and large, one of the worst sides in not just the league, but in history. They were so poor that Lucha Gonzalez was sent packing in June, and they never really recovered. After some impressive offseason signings, including a 30-plus goal scorer from Europe, two experienced fullbacks from Europe, they missed the 2024 playoffs. Connor, I ask you, what went wrong?
Should we gentlemen shake on this and just say everything and move on?
Absolutely not. Because
All
you
right.
have
Well,
you have an agenda to share. You know that.
it's hard to pick a place to start, but let's start with the area that they're likely to set history in, and that's defensively. With one game to go, they are already tied for the most goals conceded in a season in MLS history. So, as someone, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but unless they keep a clean sheet, which is highly unlikely since they're playing LAFC or just highly unlikely in general, they will have sole possession of that record. So let's start at the back. Every one of San Jose's keepers that played this season had a negative PSXG plus minus, with Yarbrough the second worst in the entire league. More from him later from Andrew. Then there was the factor that half of the back line was new this season, with Costa and Wilson joining, was going to make it a bit tough to build chemistry. But I think the reality is that they never built chemistry to begin with the back line, or ever built chemistry. The interesting thing is that they only have a 56.5 XGA, or expected goals against, which to me says that the keepers very much let this team down. So, for reference, that the FCC team that also conceded 75 goals had an XGA of 63.8, so significantly higher than San Jose's. San Jose should not be in this conversation for worst defense. I mean, they were bad defensively, right? But they, based on their XGA, they should not be in this conversation of setting the all-time record for most goals conceded. But here we are. Having Daniel and JT hurt a lot of the year did not help this. So I do think that there is a way forward for them in this regard, but this was definitely a massive reason for the downfall this year.
Yep, I'll follow on just with that and say defensive liabilities because anybody who follows our Twitter account, and if you don't, you should go look up the designated players on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, depending on if you're cool or not. They know that we've been tracking this for probably 2 months now. Pretty much ever since we came into our mid-season bold predictions, because somebody made a mid-season bold prediction that San Jose would break the goals against record. And with one game to go, they are level with FCC's 2019 disaster class of a defensive performance with 75 goals against. And if they concede just once, as Connor mentioned before, against LAFC, they will be leaders in their own right. You cannot leak goals that badly and succeed. They didn't score a ton of goals either, but they don't do themselves any favor with their inability to keep the ball out of the net. And if you go onto Wikipedia, there's this whole like records page of like best players and best teams and whatever, and worst players and worst teams and whatever. If you look at all the teams that have a lot of those goals against, none of them made the playoffs and they're not very good. So, spoiler
Shocker.
alert. Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 2 point is mentality. And in very similar circumstances to the New England Revolution, this team is getting hit with mental issues that are inhibiting their performance. In a quote from striker Jeremy Ebobisse in September 2024, he said, "Everything is a disaster, frankly. We can't talk about next year because I don't know if I'm going to be here next year. I don't know if some of the guys in the locker room will be here." In the same fashion as the Rebs, this does not just happen out of the blue. This was clearly built up from overtime and eventually boiled over. It's safe to say this mentality was affecting their play on the field, besides the fact that they just weren't good. This team is in desperate need of a vision, and I think they need a new coach who can give them that vision.
Yeah, so I actually wrote that whole thing out and I was like, Nah, I'm gonna leave that to Connor because I know he's gonna hit on that because it's one of the few things I like individually sent you because you're off Twitter now because you want to preserve your mental health, loser.
How dare
Not
I?
all of us, not all of us can be that mature and get off Twitter and stop being connected, even no matter how much we'd like to. No, good for you, seriously. I wish I could follow you. One day I will. Um,
Yes.
it was one of the ones I remember I specifically screenshot you. I was like, oh my God, this is so bad. I can't believe they're doing this. But yeah, they're another team that it's just and when you are that bad, those sort of cracks start to happen, especially when you have a team that shouldn't be that bad, right? We talked about the players that they brought in, we talked about the players already had. I think we both had them relatively low. And when we were with Tectonic Takes doing our preseason, I was like, you just went through this whole thing about all these great signings and stuff. Why'd you put them like bottom quarter of the conference? And we're just like vibes, dude. Like they just feel like they're going to be a bad team, and they shouldn't be, right? They shouldn't be that bad, but it always felt like it was going to happen this way, and it doesn't shock anybody, right? So it's tough that way, but that will be something that a new coach and a new mindset. You're going to need a couple new players. You might need to do a full rebuild. Get what you can for Jabo. Get what you can for Espinoza in the outer market. Right. Get what you can. Take one more bad year and then bring it all back up. Right. For me, I also mentioned something you mentioned in your first point was big injury games specifically to goalkeepers. Right. Your back and the back line in general. Right. Martin Kowski out all year. Daniel out 2/3 of the year. Bruno Wilson out half the year. Right. Bruno Wilson was a new signing. Daniel was in the goalkeeper of the year conversation last year or snubbed, one of the two. Um,
Snubbed, 100%. That was my bold prediction, I believe.
I know it was. And then Marcinkowski, right, who would have been a very reliable number two. That leads to an awful defensive record, of course, and from there, a difficult 2024. And it leads into my third point, which I will reserve for the end.
I'm excited for your third point. So I'll get through my third one so we can get to yours. But my last reason here is ownership. So the Quakes have not had a winning season since 2013. That is over
You're
a
kidding.
decade.
Are you serious?
They have had either I think their best was they were level on wins and losses, but they
Oh
have
my
not
word.
had more wins than losses since 2013.
That's
That is
criminal.
over that is over a decade of watching this team lose. And when it gets to that level, you can't point the finger at one coach or one squad of players. That goes back to the only consistency, which maybe I don't have 10 years of San Jose history here, so somebody can tell me if I'm wrong, but that goes to the only consistency, which is the owners. They have done a very poor job with finding the right people to run this team and seemingly don't care if the team gets any better. A team that's been around as long as the Quakes, for them to only have 12 designated players in their club's history, especially considering only a handful have been worthy of that title, is wild to me. Compare that with Chicago's 22 designated players all time, and you could tell the difference in ambition in the ownership. They also need to get the coaching situation right, which they've struggled to do very often, obviously, considering they haven't won. Since that last winning season, they've had 9 different coaches, none of which have worked out, which again points to ownership being the problem. Do your due diligence and make the right investments.
Innocent Emaraga slander will not be tolerated on this podcast. Anybody with a name that cool should be paid millions of dollars, just straight up.
Just on name
Um,
alone.
yeah, but no. I don't think there are any disagreements there, right? Like the owner of the Quakes is also the same guy who just moved Oakland straight out of town because he didn't invest enough in Oakland, right? In with the A's. It's also the same guy who now owns the second team San Jose, which just rebranded to the town, right? I think that's yeah, rebranded to the town. And everybody's like, yeah, that's great. We have the town, but we don't want John Fisher involved with it because John Fisher sucks, right? He doesn't spend on baseball. He doesn't spend on soccer. Like when people look at like, oh, MLS is so bad because it has no pro rel and owners can just get away with doing nothing and making money. They're talking about John Fisher, right? John Fisher is the guy that they are like, oh, this is, and they're not wrong in that sense. Like he's the stain on what we're doing here. They're not doing enough. Just completely leaving this team out to dry and putting them in a terrible, terrible spot. Speaking of people who are putting this team in a terrible, terrible spot, have I told you about William Yarborough and the William
You're like one
Yarborough
of those, what do they call them? Like missionaries. You're like coming to my door. I'm here to spread the bad word about William Yarbrough.
incident? Hello, my name is Elder Andrew, and I would like to share with you the word of William Yarborough and his awful goalkeeping record.
Please
Oh
tell me more.
man. Well, let me read to you from my scripture entitled "The 2024 MLS Transfer Reactions." My thoughts on
Is
Yarborough
it
are no
like
secret.
is this would you title this is this like you know how they have like John 3:16? Is this Andrew like 3:15?
I say, well,
Let me
when
tell
did we
you about
post it?
Andrew 3:15.
We could make an entire religion out of this podcast. I think enough people would
Oh
turn into a
God.
cult.
That's too
Spin
much.
off. Spin off. Listen, my thoughts on Yarborough are no secret. I wish that they gave Ochoa a shot with the number two. And then I went on to say in our preview that not a single person in the year of our Lord 2024 with William Yarborough in goal can be successful. I said that back before they even kicked the ball. In 22 appearances, he conceded 45 goals with a PSXG of negative 7.9. Only Zach Steffen was worse. But based on that logic, William Yarborough should be in the national team. I don't know. Um, JT Marcinkowski was out all year. Daniel was also out long term. Emi Ochoa was just sitting on the bench, and they went with Yarborough. Actually, Emi Ochoa was sitting on the second team. They brought in another Jacobs came in, and he was the bench guy for a while. This wooden spoon was earned by their negligence, and I feel no sympathy. This is what you get for 22 games of William Yarborough. Bask in your poor decision making. Reflect on your inability to make the right decision. Hold your wooden spoon with pride and do better next year.
He had one clean sheet in 19 appearances. That's actually insane.
Yeah, like some of the goals he gives up are just shocking, and it's it's just not good enough. And what sucks is that, like I said, they were done for a month. They've been done for a month. Why not give this shot to Emi Ochoa, who I have no idea how you sign back onto a contract. He should have gone anywhere. USL, another MLS team, Mexico. He could have gone anywhere. I mean, the hype on this kid was legit. Why he hasn't, why he re-signed up to be the town FC goalkeeper when he was clearly not given a shot in the worst defensive team in MLS history. And I'm gonna just say that now because by the time this episode goes out, they will be on their way to it. You know, that is the William Yarborough having a minus 7.9 and then being like, yeah, let's just roll with him until we get back. Like either Emi Ochoa is not as good as we thought he was, or this decision making is costing them success, which again is probably a combination of the two. But you're earning the wooden spoon at that point. That's not a oh man, we had some tough luck with injuries and we had nobody else to replace him. Like you didn't even give him a shot. You went with the guy you knew wasn't going to be successful, and you left the guy with the potential on the bench.
I mean, there was no better time to throw him out there. There's
That's
literally
what I
nothing to
mean.
lose.
That's what I mean. Like what exactly? What are you going to lose, right? Okay, we're gonna concede a couple of extra goals because he's a kid, but he also is going to get actual first team experience instead of MLS Next Pro experience. Like I don't know. I don't know. I
I
don't
agree
know.
with you.
This is yeah. I don't know.
You stink, San
Other things.
Jose. Get it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, do better. Hold that wooden spoon in the mirror and say, repeat after me, I will be better next year. I will be better next year.
Hard to be worse.
Yeah, for real.